Let's talk about Epstein now. Maxwell took the fifth as expected. The chairman came out and announced that there's a bunch of people coming in to give depositions, including, in theory, the Clintons, Epstein's accountant, Epstein's lawyer, one other person, I'm currently forgetting who. Um, a number of developments in Great Britain. The prime minister has not quit yet, and sources say he's determined to hang on, but I'm not sure he'll make it, honestly. Some additional of his political allies have publicly called for him to resign, even though he never met Epstein. And some of his allies are rallying around him. But I believe, check Ladbrokes and other betting sites, but I believe the smart money is on his stepping down. A number of members of Congress of both parties are calling for Howard Lutnick to resign as Commerce Secretary. He obviously did not tell the truth when asked, not under oath, but in a podcast, about his relationship with Epstein, and people are suggesting that was a disqualifying act. Some people are, mostly Democrats, calling for him to step down, but some Republicans. And a number of other continue to be stories in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and elsewhere, digging deep into the documents to write stories about people and their ties to Epstein. Today, some members of Congress went to Capitol Hill, or to the Justice Department rather, and were allowed to read unredacted versions of the documents that have been released. Here's what Jared Moskowitz, Democratic congressman, said after he emerged from viewing the unredacted Epstein files. Quote, he saw lots of co-conspirators. I mean, it's disgusting. There are lots of names, lots of co-conspirators, and they're trafficking girls all across the world. Now, the Associated Press read the documents redacted and said there was no evidence of an international sex trafficking ring. I don't know if Congressman Moskowitz, when he says girls, means underaged women or just females, but we'll see if there's more on that. Here is Chairman Comer talking about Maxwell and what she did today. Number 5, please.
As expected, Ghislaine Maxwell took the fifth and refused to answer any questions.
Sorry, I got to take this back with the audio.
Any questions to ask about the crimes she and Epstein committed, as well as questions about potential co-conspirators. We sincerely want to get to the truth of the American people and justice for the survivors. That's what this investigation is about.
Maxwell's attorney said that she's willing to testify if the president gives her clemency. And he said amongst the things she would testify to is that neither President Trump nor President Clinton did anything wrong. He didn't say didn't break the law. He said did some phrase like didn't do anything wrong. Here's Congressperson Stansbury on Howard Lutnick, one of many members calling for him to step down. Number 8, please.
What if there was a conversation around Howard Lutnick, for example? I know Comer said he didn't want to disrupt the other 5 depositions that they have scheduled, but I don't know how even just trying to speak to Comer would disrupt the other 5. So I wonder if you could help us understand.
With regards to this deposition?
With regards to any future deposition with Howard Lutnick or some of the others that you described.
The committee is keeping an ongoing list of individuals we would like to subpoena. It's really important for folks to understand that in order for us to subpoena anybody, the majority has to consent. And so while we appreciate that there is bipartisan cooperation in this case, we have a whole list of individuals we would like to subpoena before the committee that they have not consented to. Of course, we would like to speak to Secretary Lutnick, and I personally believe that Mr. Lutnick needs to step down immediately.
Again, other Democrats have said that, a few Republicans. I think a few, at least one, I should say. The media likes to say bipartisan if it's one Republican.
Thomas Massey, and then it's automatically bipartisan.
There may be another, but yeah, Thomas Massey makes it bipartisan. There's obvious momentum to this story. The press is, the Wall Street Journal every day, New York Times most every day has an investigative piece or two about all of this. And obviously Mr. Comer continues. And obviously there's going to be stuff coming out of the redactions and a lot of questions about why things were redacted. So, Mary Margaret, to the extent you could be in charge of this whole thing and say, who does what the journalists do, what the politicians do, what the people do, where should this go in the national interest, broadly defined?
Well, look, this is of great national interest to the American public. And, we go back and forth as to why. I think you could absolutely make the argument that Democrats, for example, are far more interested in the Epstein files right now than they were when President Biden was in office. But at the same time, the American public is very, very, very interested in the Epstein files. And so journalists absolutely should be digging into them. We should have investigators digging into them. I certainly want to know why certain names were redacted and why others weren't. I'd love to know more, for example, about what the DOJ said when they said that during the 2020 election, right before, there were a number of different complaints and allegations made against the president. I looked at some of these and I saw in the Epstein files that were just released how a lot of the people that submitted these allegations didn't leave any way to contact them. And when the ones who did, they didn't call back, things like that. That's all very interesting to me. And I think, in efforts of transparency, we haven't thoroughly discussed all of this yet, but absolutely worth discussing. I want to know everything we can about them. And I'm very happy that they've been released and I'd like to learn more.
Yeah, Missy.
One thing I really appreciate is that Democrats have not faltered on who gets called out on them. When they posited having the Clintons come, I want one thing important to note is that some of the Democrats that voted for the Clintons to come to the Hill were young Democrats. Maxwell Frost, Sarah Jacobs. When Sarah Jacobs was asked about it, she said, I was a preschooler when Bill Clinton was president. It's really important to note that there's a growing faction of the Democratic Party, a lot of folks who are younger that are not tied to any figureheads within the party. So for a lot of people, this really is a bipartisan issue, and it doesn't matter what comes out of it from either side. People have to be held accountable. And on that note, then, Secretary Lutnick, I don't believe he'll be fired. If Kristi Noem still has a job, Howard Lutnick will have a job. Lutnick, the same as the Clintons, go before Congress and have to answer for these things. As long as we keep it, your side brings people forth and my side brings people forth, and we really do have an issue that is less about Democrat and Republican and is more about class and what the 1% might have participated in that the rest of us need to know about.
Okay, let me ask you both a question without prejudice. For a category of people, of whom there seem to be many, no evidence or accusation that they committed any crime with Epstein. No accusation or evidence that they knew of any crimes. No accusations or evidence that they went to Epstein's island. Okay? Stipulate that. Documentation in the files that they had email exchanges and maybe went to events with or hosted by Epstein after his release from prison. Okay? Should that category of person have their lives scrutinized? Should they lose their job? If that's the fact pattern, and this again seems to be true of many, should that category of person be fired or be forced to quit? Yeah,
no, and I actually think this is why we need to see what is unredacted. Look, the survivors of Epstein's whole debacle have said that they want files to be redacted. At this point, it feels that we're doing redactions in order to protect a small group of people. And what it is actually doing is spreading harm way beyond the radius of the people that are involved in this situation. Look, shocking to everyone, billionaires hang out with politicians. Billionaires come to Washington. I don't know how you think campaigns get won. Elections get won based off people who can fund them. And a lot of those people are billionaires. Billionaires own companies, then go to Congress and testify in front of them. Billionaires are involved in the day-to-day dealings of Washington. So not surprised, and other people should not be surprised if you see notable leaders across industries in media that emailed with Jeffrey Epstein. Of course they did. What we need to do is not a witch hunt of those people, because it distracts from those who were directly involved and actually victimize people. So I say go for unredacted, and that in turn protects others.
All right. So Mary Margaret, let me ask you about the British Prime Minister. As far as we know, what he did wrong in conjunction with Epstein was he gave an important political figure the job of U.S. ambassador to the British ambassador to the United States, after it was already clear that that person had an association with Epstein, which we now know, based on the release of the files, was even deeper than was known at the time. He says he was questioned. He questioned the ambassador. What was your ties with Epstein? And he wasn't told the truth. Does it make sense to you that the British ambassador could lose his position or the British Prime Minister could lose his position because of that fact pattern. Never met Epstein, just made the mistake of giving someone close to Epstein a big job. Is that a just outcome?
No, it doesn't seem to me at this point in time. And maybe something will happen that will change my mind or we'll learn more information. But look, this needs to be approached rationally. We need to not approach this with the emotion and drama that, say, we approach the Me Too movement. Absolutely, people who did something wrong in this situation, who were cohorts with Epstein, who engaged in having sexual relations with these underage girls. Yes, we want to know what they did. We want to know their crimes. We want them punished. But we shouldn't be just throwing people to the wind willy-nilly because of tangential associations. We need to be just about this. We need to be prudent and rational. And so, yes, when we learn that someone in a position of power had associations with Epstein that they didn't disclose, I want to know more about them. But that doesn't mean we should just throw them to the wind as soon as we learn this. Let's learn more. Let's learn what those associations were. One example, and I've been looking into this since maybe, 2020, 2021, when we learned more about this, former President Bill Clinton blew on the Lolita Express 17 times. I'd like to know more about that. That's very interesting to me. We have pictures of getting massages from these underage girls. Like to know more about that. He says he's never been to Little St. James, Epstein's island. So at this point in time, if we find out that he did, that, for example, would be a very big story that I would like to learn more of. And I think that, we'd need to have more consequences when we learn more about what, if he did go there, what happened. But that's an example of how we could follow this trail and learn more and why there might need to be consequences for someone. I don't think that if your name appeared in there, we should just ruin your life. There are many people, for example, journalists that I know, that I'm sure Jamisi knows as well, who reached out with press inquiries and thus were named in the Epstein files. They were just reporting and they were not associated with Epstein. So that's just one example.
I appreciate everything you said. Just to clarify, not just so we don't get sued, but just to clarify, I don't believe there's documented proof that the young women pictured with President Clinton are underage. They might be. They're young, but I don't know that we know that they're underage. Just clarifying that one point, unless you know otherwise.
No, that's a fair point, Mark. That's a fair point.
Okay. Yeah, Missy, let's just take the fact pattern with Howard Lutnick, because people in your party are saying he should be fired or he should resign. Let's leave aside that he did not tell the truth. When he did an interview with a podcast, he laid down a marker saying, I went to his apartment, his home with my wife. I saw how gross it was there. I never was in the room with that man again. All right, he said that. And then it turns out he tried to arrange to see him in or around his island. And he was in business with them, and their signatures appear on adjoining pages. And they had other associations, like they both were concerned that the Frick Museum was doing construction that was going to ruin their views, and they emailed back and forth about that. As far as we know, that's it. Now, there may be more, but as far as there's more, well, there is more. Epstein donated a table to a charity dinner for him. So they clearly had an association. All of that, I believe, I'm pretty sure all of that happened after the date where Lutnick previously said there had no contact. But leave aside the fact that he did not appear to tell the truth. Just based on that fact pattern, is that someone, in your view, if you were judge and jury, is that someone who should lose his job?
No, I don't see anything illegal that happened. If I find out that Secretary Lutnick had sexual relations with underage girls, yes, he should leave his job, and he should also face a trial. But that hasn't been proven anything. I think knowing someone and having a personal relationship with somebody, especially when you're of the net worth that Lutnick is, I'm not surprised. I mean, when Elon Musk first said, I never knew Epstein, I didn't know him, I was like, yeah, you do, because you're a billionaire and he's a billionaire, and 1 + 1 = 2. And what if we found out that they know each other, they hang out in the same circles, they've been at dinners together? I mean, I just think that people of a certain class just have to admit, yeah, we do know the guy.
Cozy Earth will give you 20% off everything on the site. Now's the time. If you've never tried the products, the pants, the sheets, the towels, now's the time to give them a try and see what all the fuss is about. Why are so many of your fellow members of the two-way community so excited about their Cozy Earth products? 20% off. Go to cozyearth.com, promo code two-way. Buy some gifts for folks. Buy stuff for yourself. The Baja bedding set, 20% off. The Luxe bath towels, 20% off. The Bubble Cuddle blanket, yes, 20% off. And the pants, all available to you now. 20% off. Go to cozyearth.com, promo code two-way for 20% off. Refresh your routines with comfort that makes every day feel like a new year. If I were you and you haven't bought anything yet, I'd just go on and buy the thing that looks best to you. It could be the bubble cuddle blanket. It could also be a nice pair of pants, whatever it is. And you'll see there's something about the material. There's something about the softest viscose made from bamboo that's different than anything you own now in any of those categories: towel sheets, pants, or shirts. CozyEarth.com, promo code two-way. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
They say that something that's easy is like a walk in the park. Well, easier than a walk in the park, hit the subscribe button, be part of the two-way community, never miss an episode, be part of our conversations. Thank you for your service to America.
And don't forget, you can now listen to the morning meeting and two-way tonight on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.